Hey everybody. So, I've been able to catch up on a lot of reading since I can listen to audiobooks at work, and I decided that since it's the Christmas season, I want to get through Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol because I think, like a lot of us, we've seen tons and tons of adaptations growing up, and I wanted to get into the original. I think I may have read it once, but man, reading it this time gives me a whole different perspective because this book is really good. I was tearing up at parts of it, even though I know all the lines, I know the whole plot, but something about it, how this book is both so relevant to today and needed, but it's also so foreign and alien because it is so not modern. And I think that, like, starting off, you could not publish this today. You could not get this written today because people would say this is saccharine, this is like a Hallmark movie, this is for kids. Because this, like a lot of Victorian literature and a lot of pre-modern art, is guileless. It is totally sincere and it is devoid of cynicism, and you can't get that today. Everything is just veiled in cynicism and nihilism because we're a culture of nihilism and death. Like, there's a lot of good movie adaptations, but I don't think any of them hold a candle because that kind of modern sensibility still bleeds through, whereas this is just able to stand honest and sincere. And reading it, it's so straightforward and simple. Because I always fear, like, when I read something that's a lot older, and this came out in 1843, that it's going to be kind of hard to read. But talk about on the nose, which is completely justified for Dickens to be this blatant about the theme, which is, spoilers, it's mainly Christ's second commandment to love thy neighbor. But people didn't he knew people wouldn't fully get it then, and people still don't get it now. So he was completely in the right to be, to hit you over the head with it because we needed to. And something I noticed in the book that none of the adaptations have is that this is a much more explicitly Christian and religious story. Like, Christ being the cause for Christmas is brought up constantly. You have the line from Tiny Tim where he's like, I want people to see me as a cripple so that they can be reminded of how Jesus, healed the lepers and healed the sick. And, like, a biblical passage that I was reminded a lot of reading this is Jesus is Matthew 25 verse 31 to 46, which is when Christ talks about separating the sheep from the goats, saying that whatever you did to the least of these you did to me. And that is the theme of this, in that, I mean, that the moral is pretty simple. It's, if you don't love others as you love yourself, you're going to hell. Like, what you do in this life doesn't just affect you, it affects other people's, and it affects your soul, because they don't shy away from how miserable Jacob Marley is, and, like, the other ghosts that are basically in a purgatory or a hell, unable to do anything or fix anything about their life. And Scrooge is I like how Scrooge is a very modern person. Like, I imagine there's, like, libertarians or, like, modern Puritans, or probably Puritans back then, or, from the 1600s, well before this book was written, would have been like, well, they're rooting for Scrooge. Like, he's completely right. He's an industrious businessman. Why shouldn't he be like this? And he's, like, so cynical and bitter that when the ghosts start coming, he just starts questioning them. Like, I half expected him to say, do you have a peer-reviewed study that proves you're a ghost? But what I like is that he's so bitter and, like, mean on the outside, but then as soon as, like, yeah, these ghosts are real. He just completely melts into jelly. Um, and I love the ghosts. I love the design or how he describes them because there's a very kind of ancient Greek pantheon feel to them. Like the ghosts of Christmas past very much feels like Athena or Apollo. The ghost of Christmas present is very much like a Dionysus, but like with a Christian tinge to it, where it's Dionysus, but with the understanding of Christian charity and like he would be like the patron saint of feast days, and the ghost of Christmas past obviously very much like Hades, like the Grim Reaper, and even though he gets it kind of after the first ghost, he really doesn't even need more than Jacob Marley. No, he needs at least one ghost to like show him what he did wrong. And he's like, yeah, I kind of get it, but they kind of forcibly, they force him to like see these are the consequences of your actions, not just for you, but for other people. And like I really like in the when he goes to the future and there's the people kind of pawning off all of his junk, is that it again reminds me of the biblical line where don't store up treasures on earth where moths will eat them and like thieves will steal them, because he's not just greedy and mean and miserable to everybody, but he's like, he doesn't even love himself because he's a miser. He eats gruel, he doesn't light his house, he's just like lives in the bare minimum, and like he can't even enjoy the wealth he has for himself, let alone share it with others. And at the end, what's left, it's just garbage. It's just the most expensive thing they pawn off is his curtain rings for his bed. And yeah, like when they lay into him, when the ghosts lay into about like what a horrible person he's been, like they don't let up. I really like that. I love like when he's seeing in the present Tiny Tim, and he's like, oh, like he is a human being, feels like remorse. He's like, oh, poor Tiny Tim, and then like will he die? And then it just plays back what he said, which is, well, if they're gonna die, they should just get it quickly over with quickly and reduce the surplus population. And it's like, oh, how relevant to today, where you have people that are just heartless and just like, well, overpopulation, we should just kill off a whole bunch of people and like not treat others as human beings, say like the elderly or the unborn. And yeah, and like another part I love is when they're going kind of around the world showing like coal miners are still singing Christmas hymns. Like two guys in a lighthouse are celebrating Christmas. Guys on a boat are, and that kind of got me teared up a bit, because I was just thinking of how this was written in a time when that was a universal constant across the West, right? Where you had this constancy of, or this constant of, everybody celebrates Christmas, everybody celebrates the birth of Jesus, and understands it as not just a time of secular or material celebration, but a deeply religious feast for the birth of Christ, which and it kind of reminded me of the Christmas truce in World War One, where kind of for the last time Christendom had that one moment where all the as the West was committing suicide by this war, all the violence and hatred ended for one day because of Jesus. And sadly, seems like since then that's kind of gone away. That there isn't a constant, there is no spiritual or cultural civilizational constant anchor for the West anymore. Like Christmas, that spiritual and Western Christmas does not exist anymore. And it's like, it makes it feel more and more alien to today, to a modern audience, but it makes you kind of yearn for that. And Charles Dickens, like through this book, was kind of instrumental in kind of a revival of celebrating Christmas in the Victorian era. And like this book is an affront to both the Puritans of like the 1600s, who I'm sure would have wanted this book burned, and to the modern atheistic Puritans known as progressives today. Like, this book is like everything that they would hate. It's Christian, it's sincere, it's Western, and it's happy. It's it's able to kind of combine the ideas of there's nothing wrong with a material celebration. There's nothing wrong with feasts. You know, feast, eat, drink, and be merry. Like, there's a reason why they're called feast days in Christianity. And, uh, true Christians have had to deal with this for, throughout our history, in that you have the early Gnostics who just kind of wanted a firm separation between anything spiritual is good, anything material is evil. The Puritans who are really kind of embodied in Scrooge, in that, even though I don't think Scrooge is religious before his conversion through the dream, or through the visitation of the spirits, where it's just focus on your work, be industrious, but like don't enjoy any of your wealth. And modern Puritans, right? Modern atheistic Puritans, the progressives, the left, where it's, you have to be ashamed for who you are, but be hedonistic, but don't be spiritual in any real capacity. And like, especially now with the pandemic, right? Is like, I just saw a thing on Twitter where it's like, should Boris Johnson cancel Christmas? And it's just like people thinking they have the audacity to say, well, maybe you can celebrate Christmas with your family this year. Like, people taking away this sacred holiday that is, everybody has a right to celebrate it. And these people, these monsters, think they can just take that away. Which, again, I think makes a story like A Christmas Carol even more necessary for people to read. Because, like, how many bureaucrats and, like, world leaders can you see in Ebenezer Scrooge right now? Like, hatred of humanity, miserable, pathetic, weak, and just bitter. And again, they just seem to have an absolute hatred for humanity. And in the book, it's not just, oh, give to the poor. It's, having a genuine spirit from yourself of generosity towards humanity. It's like I don't want to say humanism, because like, I think that word kind of gets tossed around a bit, but it is a genuine love for your fellow man, philanthropy. And it's one that comes deeply from a Christian mindset. Like, yeah, and I love just how you could see all the scenes of like celebration of Christmas with the Ghost of Christmas Present, where it's just endless descriptions of feasts and like how happy people are. And it's just, that's a stereotype that Christians aren't happy, but all of the good Christian characters like Bob Cratchit, Tiny Tim, Fred, who's Scrooge's nephew, everybody, they're singing hymns. They're all happy. They're all celebrating Christmas. They're all joyful. Whereas the kind of atheistic miser is miserable and is pathetic. And yeah, I think that having the understanding of how this story is it's a perfect blend of the spiritual and the material, because I don't want to say secular, because we're humans made in God's image. Jesus was fully human and fully divine, and we are meant to enjoy life. And I think this kind of shows a great way of doing that, or this shows just that, especially on Christmas, in which there's no greater reason to be joyful than the birth of Christ. And so, yeah, I would absolutely recommend this book, especially over any of the adaptations, because the book is the most Christian. And another thing I love is that, like, what this thing isn't, it's, even though I've kind of applied how, this flies in the face of a lot of modern political ideology, but the book is not political. Because I know some idiot is gonna, like, probably compare this to, let's read this through a Marxist lens of like the poor. It's like that's not the point. Scrooge is not an evil capitalist, and it's like the point is it's again, the book is too religious. It is too Christian. So yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on the Christmas Carol. It's a fantastic book. It's a very easy read. Like the audiobook's only a little over 3 hours. Definitely read it this holiday season, and like it's definitely put me in the Christmas mood, because I've always been thinking like, well, I don't want to partake in the evil secular holiday that's usurped Christmas, because what they call Christmas now is not Christmas. So I thought like, well, I should just try and be kind of puritanical and just be purely spiritual, austere. But this kind of shows a better way of the kind of material celebration of Christmas and the religious go hand in hand. So read the book, and have a happy Advent, and God bless us, everyone.